Hello and welcome to Unsafe Space with Carter and Keri. I'm here with Carter Laren as usual. Hello, Carter.
I'm all good. How you doing,
You
Keri?
ready? I'm good.
Am I ready?
Uh,
I'm
are you
ready. Yeah.
ready? Okay,
Sure.
good. Well, we're excited because we're here today with Maree Buscke. It's pronounced Busky, like car key, Busky. Maree is well, you own a yarn shop, Skeinz Yarn, Skeinz Yarn. The NZ is for New Zealand.
For New
Um,
Zealand, yeah.
New Zealand, Skeinz Yarn. You can find her online at Skeinz, Skeinz.com. She also runs the largest bespoke yarn event in New Zealand, which is called Knit August Nights. And we've been wanting to talk to you for a while. I let it fall through the cracks for a while. I'm really happy it's happening today. Welcome to Unsafe Space.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much for having me.
Now, would you say do you dye yarn yourself? Are you a yarn dyer or?
No. So I'm not.
Okay.
I am part of a group. So Skeinz is part of a group, and Skeinz itself is unusual because it is a business. It's a retail business, both online and bricks and mortar, and we are the direct to public retailer for actually a spinning mill called Design Spun Ltd. And I've worked as part of the mill for 14, yeah, this is my 14th year. So we're actually a yarn manufacturer, and we became we've always had a small retail store, but we went online. In fact, our 10-year anniversary is next week from going online.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. So when I started there, I started with patent development and helping them in terms of manufacturing and new product development to take direct to retail, because that's what my background had been. And I had moved to the region with my husband for his work, and then help them develop Skeinz.com. So Skeinz is my baby. I've worked on it right from the get-go. And then I loved it so much that my husband and I bought into the company a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago now. So, yeah, They can't get rid of me as easily as they could have back in the day. So.
And then when did you start Knit August Nights?
So Knit August Night celebrated its 10-year anniversary August last year. So that sort of, the two were kind of happening concurrently at the same time. And meanwhile, I was also had two very small children as well. So, yeah, it seemed a bit crazy, but you know what they say, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. So that's what we did. So Knit August Nights is interesting. Knit August Nights started out essentially as a way to get some knitters together, have some classes, maybe do a bit of shopping, and enjoy sort of a small retreat, which yarnies and crafters have been doing for decades and decades. It's not a new concept. Mine is a little different because I hold mine in a bar. And bar and hotels. So whereas a lot will go away to have it in sort of like a scout halls or retreats, I basically decided that the best social lubricant to bring people together was one that I helped people open up a little. So I pulled them all together in a bar and a restaurant right on the ocean side next to where I live, and it started with 36 people in year one, and last year I think I had over 330 attend.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's not massive, like it's not like on US scales, but it is certainly something that I'm really proud of. It's something that I love, and it brings everybody together. Like, it's so incredible, the people that attend from all ages. It's just the one single focus is yarn and love of yarn crafts and knitting and this single passion. Everybody focused on the single love and the single passion, and it's something that I really love and I'm proud of. And I've just had to defer for 2020.
Oh no!
But that's okay. We'll be back next year.
So you had some. I guess one of the reasons, Keri, I know was talking to you was that you've. Mm-hmm. This COVID thing had some SJWs come out of the woodwork, but they've already been kind of after you in the past. Can you talk about what was happening before this whole COVID thing with your relationship with the more radical arm of the knitting community?
I'm someone from a social media point of view, I came to social media quite late in the party. So I got dragged to it kicking and screaming 10 years ago when we created Skeinz. And I didn't have a Facebook profile. I wasn't really, just wasn't interested. And so I just was really quite unaware about the entire social justice phenomenon. And which, sometimes I wish I could hark back to those days.
We all wish we were unaware of the social justice phenomenon.
It was a much nicer place. But so from our perspective, we created Skeinz, and as we grew and started to gather success, we then, it started for us that they existed, that we realised that they were out there, and it was in late 2018. And for us, it started with some of our customers and people within our local New Zealand community saying to us, are you going to publish a diversity statement on your website? And I get all these inquiries, and I was like, what is this diversity statement you speak of?
What do they want it to say? Yeah.
Okay, we accept everybody. As long as you pay for yarn, we're not going to, that's the only exclusion that we have, is that it's not for free. You must purchase it. So I didn't quite understand where they were going with it. I was a bit naive. And so I was like, why? Why do we need a diversity statement? I mean, we've never put a stake in the ground about who we represent. There has only ever been one tenant, and it's yarn. So unless you have something against yarn, I thought, good. Yeah, little did I know that that's not an acceptable answer, and so we were getting a lot of pressure, and I had a lot of people that I was acquaintances with at the time through Knit August Nights, who were very entrenched in this ideology, and it was something that I had always battled with, because I'm from a rural upbringing. I'm very pragmatic. And they were saying to me, well, Maree, you need to understand this, and this is actually going on, and you're not seeing this, and you're a leader in the community, and you need to be leading and showing them that you're actually at the forefront of all of this. And so I listened, because I didn't understand. I'm very much a believer that if I don't understand a concept, that I will actually look into it and dive into it and actually try and get a better understanding of what that concept is. So then that way, from that, I can make an informed decision for both either myself personally or the businesses that I represent and that I own. So I spent a lot of time speaking to people that I dealt with on a day-to-day basis through these businesses, and they were very clear about things doing. So I said, okay, well, I'll start pulling something together. So I start pulling a statement together, and I had trusted people that chipped in on it. And it just still didn't sit well. I mean, from a Skeinz perspective, I would speak to my colleagues, and they were like, we don't understand, why do we have to do this? And I'm like, I don't know. They're telling us that we have to do it. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't understand why we have to do it. And we sort of dragged our heels, like we wrote it. And so if anybody emailed us and said, have you got one? We'd say, oh, here it is. But we never actually published it. We were like, okay, well, we've done it because you want one. But to me, that's meaningless. Like, from our perspective, we'd always maintained that actions speak louder than words. So for us, having a statement that said we accept everybody and then apply a label to every single one of those factions, which, of course, since 2018, there's way more labels than what they were back then. We actually looked at our own business. We looked at who we employed. We looked at, and we thought to ourselves, well, we tick so many of those boxes, but not for trying, just because because we reflected the community that we live in. Why do we then need to sort of put it out there in the word that we do that? So we found that, really tough. So then the Christmas period came through, and then, of course, in early 2019, you had Karen Templer, Kate Davies, Maria, the wonderful Maria, and it just went insane. And we were sitting in New Zealand in the bottom half of the world looking at this insanity in the Northern Hemisphere going, damn, these bitches gone cray-cray. And it's like, whoa, what's going on up there? This is insane, you know. And we would sit at work and go, my colleague would say, did you read that on Instagram? And what? This is nuts. Why are they saying these things? And we're quite stunned, really, really stunned.
I'm going to interrupt here just to tell anybody who's maybe watching who's not familiar with it what you're talking about, Maree. Yeah. We did a video on our channel, Unsafe Space, where it was dipping our toe into the SJW knitting Instagram wars, and that was called SJW Knitting Circle from Hell. And we also did an interview with Marie Tuscan, much like this one. If anybody wants to know, it's too much to cover in this video, but you can go get your background in one of those. And there's been other. Just look for SJW Knitting on YouTube. You'll find other videos too. But yeah. So for anyone who's not aware, it was crazy.
Yeah. I think for Carter too. I mean, that's when this turned into a knitting channel. And Carter, I'm going to send you a starter pack.
It's okay. I can handle it. I understand. In fact, we have been remiss in our knitting duties. We need to have this is one of the reasons we need to do this show and have you on, because we're going to lose the knitters if we don't talk about yarn sometime soon.
And as you've already discovered, we're quite a feisty bunch. So where do we go? So then all that insanity happened with, both in the UK and the US. So it wasn't just defined to one nation. And what we started getting down here is we were starting to get, again, this whole diversity statement thing started cropping up again, more emails and inquiries. You haven't published your diversity statement. Have you? Where is your diversity statement? Where do you stand on this? What? We don't know. Why do we need to stand on something that's happening half a world away? I'm very much of the only thing that you can control is your own actions, and our actions and responsibilities sit with the businesses and our business and the customers and the people that we. So why are you asking me to make a position about something that I'm not directly involved with? Don't really know. And
when they were asking you where you stand on this, they meant, where do you stand on, you're talking about the Instagram post with respect to visiting India? That's what they were asking for your stance on? Or something else?
Well, all sorts. I mean, I had people when things were happening with Kate Davis, what are your, what's your stand on what has happened with Kate, or what's your stand with what's happening with Karen Templar, and then especially with Maria. And I'm really sorry, Maria. I still haven't met Maria, but I didn't know who Maria was. Right. I don't follow a lot.
How dare you?
I know.
How dare you not know who Maria is?
I do now. I did from January last year. I was like, who is this woman? I need to find out more about her, because I had no idea who she was.
What they're really asking is, like, are you in our cult or not?
Exactly.
That's not the way they phrase it, but it's like, are you joining our cult, or are you a non-believer who we can now target?
Yeah.
Right? But
yeah. And so then from there, I had a phone call from a friend who is actually, in her heart, an incredible lady. I mean, she's very accomplished and someone that I still admire for so many reasons. And we shared, as well as our love for knitting and craft, we also shared some other things as well. And she contacted me she's Australian, after going back to Australia, and she said, she was deeply moved by a lot of issues, particularly around racism. And in Australia, there are a number of issues, particularly with Indigenous racism, and it was something that really moved her. So she'd always had what I called sort of leanings in that social justice area anyway, but this really enlightened, and she awoken quite dramatically from that time. And so she contacted me and sort of felt that in my position, both with the event and the yarn store, that I should be somebody that should be working with her to lead this ideology forward within our own community here in New Zealand. And that was something that really didn't sit well with me. And I said to her, well, look, I can see some of the elements that you're talking about, and there are things that, blatant racism isn't right, and all of these certain elements that are issues within any society that need to be understood and addressed and discussed. But what I don't agree with and I didn't agree with her, is that, you also have to look at a society and a community within its whole. And the way that you're going around and tackling this, she was wanting to create training for allies, so for people essentially to train them to actually be able to call out other people that they believe are being racist or not falling within the ideology, to actually educate them to stop doing that. And I really had an issue with that, because I know a whole bunch of people who I am involved with in our community who are really good people in their heart. I mean, I look at what's in here and what's in their core, and, I'm not going to persecute somebody who, in the eyes of an SJW, is showing themselves as being a racist or someone who's persecuting someone because of religion or whatever the reason may be, because all they're doing is being who they are, and they're reflecting the community and the environment and the lifestyle, how they've grown up. And all they're doing is being themselves. And then all of a sudden to be told by somebody in another faction that, oh, no, you're not allowed to do anything. Everything that you believe and how you conduct yourself is wrong. Right. Where do I have the right to do that? I don't have that right to do that. And you've got a lot of really wonderful people. I mean, I was thinking about my event, and I'm thinking, what happens then if I have one of these incredible women at my event who is 70 or 80 something, who is passionate about yarn and so excited to be there, and everything is really wonderful, and they use the wrong pronoun and they get called out by one of these girls. They're not going to understand what's going on.
Right.
Or if they step in any of these traps that they lay. Because for people who don't know, the Karen Templar example, they made an example of her. Her great sin was posting a blog about how she was so excited to go to India because she'd wanted to. It was called My Year of Color. How she had wanted to go since she was a little kid, and now getting this opportunity to go, felt like she had won a trip to Mars. And it was so otherworldly to her. That little statement in a long blog about how much she loved India, they said she was racist. So that's the kind of that's the line. The line is really low about what you can say and what you can't. The bar is set very low, so that anything they dictate as being racist, it doesn't matter if it's racist or not. It doesn't matter what's in your heart or not. They said it's racist, therefore they expect you to get with the program no matter what your intent was or what you meant by it. You're not allowed to have another opinion. You've got to say, okay, I admit my sin, even though at the time I didn't realize it was a great sin. And now, I'm on board with the program, right?
Yeah, and it's almost like they're looking for that needle in a haystack in anything that you write, anything that you publish. And once they've found that needle, they then go around and start stabbing you with it until you sort of submit. It's really frustrating. So we had that sort of time, and it was actually quite fearful. As a business, we got quite fearful. I became quite fearful. I was second guessing every single thing I was publishing, single thing I was writing. Because we didn't want to gather the ire of this group. Then,
but just to be clear, that's what this is about, right? This is about, it's not about being racist. It's about power, and it's about getting you to self-censor and to walk on eggshells constantly, and to have a radar that's hyper attuned to the rules of the group and whether you're included or excluded, so that they can change the rules at any moment and you will fall in line because you're hyper aware of what the rules are. It's really about control. It has nothing to do with whether they actually believe you thought the statement about, not you, but someone thought going to Mars was a good analogy. They don't care about actual racism. They only care about the control, and that's intentional.
Oh,
I just want to clarify.
And we didn't, what I know now to what I didn't know then, you learn so much. So for us then the next nexus point came on March 15th, and March 15th in New Zealand is a day that is, there are two things that happened on that day, and one, it's my birthday, and two,
happy birthday.
But it's also the day that the Christchurch shooting happened, where over 50 people lost their lives. I mean, a deeply, deeply dark, tragic day in our history. It was horrific. And that day, unfortunately, in one of our online communities, we had someone post up some work that they had finished. So we have a group. At that stage, the group was about just over 1,000 people. It wasn't particularly large, and it was a group of around 1,000 people. And it's a closed Facebook group where you post up your finished project. So and it's I'm really proud of that group. It's such a lovely group, and they post up their finished projects. They offer advice to people on different things to do with knitting, or if they can't find something, where to find it. I don't limit it just to our business. I mean, I open it to anything. You can post anybody else's yarn, anything. I mean, for me, it's a space where crafters and knitters and crocheters can share a single love for their craft. And in that group, someone had posted a project that they'd just finished, that they'd knitted a doll, and they were really proud of the doll, plus a couple of other items, and they posted a photograph up of that on the 15th of March in the morning. And unfortunately, one of those dolls was a gollywog, which is... Sorry?
What's that?
A gollywog?
Yeah, that's not a U.S. word. I don't know what that is.
Oh, okay.
It is a U.S. word as well, yeah.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
But I don't want to explain. You explain.
So a gollywog is a doll that, depending on which portion of history that you believe, but it's essentially a doll which is a black-faced doll. Very similar, if you were Dutch, it looks like Black Pete in the Dutch culture. Okay. It was actually created, I believe, during in Turkey is where the original origins of it come, but it also looks a little bit like the black and white minstrels in early 20th century US as well. So someone had, and Noddy, from the Noddy story, so from a toy perspective, most of these patterns have been derived from the gollywogs and the Noddy stories. So someone had posted up this golly, and because it was my birthday, I wasn't actually at work that day, but I happened to be somewhere, and I scrolled and I saw this image come up, and I saw it probably within 20 minutes of it being posted. And as soon as I saw it, I thought, oh, they're going to go ape over this. So I whipped it down because I thought, no, it's my birthday. I don't want to tolerate any sort of, carry on today. I had things planned. And so I whipped it down and didn't really think anything more of it. But unfortunately, what then happened is someone had screenshotted that, and then I didn't contact the person who had posted it. They saw it had been taken down and thought, oh, so they put it back up again. And I hadn't been aware that they'd done that. And then the Tarrant shooting happened that afternoon. So everything in New Zealand just went crazy, absolutely crazy. And so we saw the second post go up. One of my colleagues whipped it down again because we thought, no, we just can't, we don't want to leave ourselves open to anything that might upset people. And everybody in the nation was reeling, absolutely reeling at this event. We just, it was really difficult. And unfortunately for us, it wasn't fast enough. An SJW had screenshotted it. And then the following day and the following days thereafter, Gollygate, as we call it at work, then unfolded. And it was a two-pronged problem. Problem one is they then posted it amongst other groups and started to call us out as a racist business because we allowed the sort of posting to go up. And usually I would be the one that would actually forefront all of this and say, and calm everybody down and say, well, hold on, no, come on, give us a chance. We haven't done this, or this is what's happened, and try and be a voice of reason. But that was actually the day that I left the country for a 2-week break with my family. And for the first 3 or so days, I had very little internet connectivity and I wasn't available by phone. So all of this is unfolding. my colleagues were back here in New Zealand trying to piece all of this together, and it just, like, as all these pylons do, they pull in everybody. They're going to other groups saying Skeinz is doing this, you need to go in and tell them what you think, and we're getting bombarded by emails and posts, and I was getting my colleagues were getting.
What was the goal? What did they say? Because their goal is not what they say it is, but I'm just curious, what did they say was the goal? Because you had already removed the post. So it's like, how can you? It's already been removed, right? Like, so what did they want from you? Or what did they say they wanted?
The post really became particularly irrelevant. It wasn't about the post. It was about the fact that a lot of them were hurting after the shooting. They saw the shooting as a directly racial attack against Muslim people, and because we posted up something that they believed was racist, and bearing in mind that we didn't post it, it was in a closed private group, it was somebody else that posted it, they just basically decided that we needed to be educated, we needed to be told that this wasn't right. We'd already removed everything, and they were then saying, well, you don't have, the diversity statement came back up, you don't have a diversity statement, you are racist, you require re-education, your behaviour is now becoming problematic. All of those words and phrases that we had never really seen or heard before were being thrown at us. We were given, I think there's a pyramid of racism, or a racial pyramid with our behaviour at the bottom right through to extreme violence at the top, and we were told that we were right near at the top of a pyramid.
You were at the violence point.
Pyramid.
Yeah.
That's like when they call Maria Tuscan Hitler. So you just overplay your hand. It's like, no, you're not even down here at the bottom. We're moving you. You're a literal Nazi.
Keri, I think didn't what's her name? That woman Harder or something, didn't she?
April Harder,
didn't she say that we were basically violent Nazis because we had I don't know what did we do? I don't remember what we did.
No, she just didn't.
There was some unconscious bias. She thought,
Yeah,
okay.
And so she went straight to the top of the pyramid. Yeah, I've seen that pyramid. I know what you're talking about. Okay, so they did that. Were they harassing your employees?
Yeah, well, they were harassing. They were harassing our online and community. They were sending these emails into the team, and bearing in mind that I'm not necessarily the one receiving them. I'm supposed to be. I mean, up until that point, I had worked. Because when you're self-employed, and Carter could probably, I guess, appreciate this. When you're self-employed, there's no such thing as standard hours. So you work these really crazy hours.
Right.
My husband and I are both self-employed. And so I really was needing this break. And it got to the point where it got so crazy that my husband had to lock my cell phone in a safe so I couldn't get near it to see what was going on. And my colleagues, who are in the most incredible group, I'm so blessed to work with this incredible group of people, and they were just having to tolerate abuse online, all these emails, phone calls. They're not trained to handle any of this. They're looking at this going, why are these people doing and saying these things? We just don't understand it. So, and then there were fights beginning to break out within the community. I've got a lot of people that are really protective of me and the work that I do. So some of them started saying to the SJWs, well, hey, come on, this is not on, and why are you doing this in this community? And this is not what we're about, and can you stop doing it? And so then some really nasty fights started happening there. And then I was getting reports back of local customers who were trying to defend us, saying, hey, you don't know what you're talking about, you don't know Maree, and you don't know the team, and you don't know the staff, and these are actually good people. And by this stage, they're painting us as Nazis and racists and all of these sorts of things.
Right.
And they're coming into the store. I mean, we had staff coming into our store crying because they'd had altercations with them online. It was just awful, really awful. And by the time I got to back into cell phone coverage and a place of internet, which was 3 days later, to be able to talk to my colleagues saying, what's going on? Has it started dying down? They were just really at their wits' end. They'd had hundreds and hundreds of nasty messages, and that energy is it's hurtful. So I managed to at least get a statement out to everybody there and saying, look, this has got to stop. I'm away. This is not fair with the team. I will address all of these concerns when I get back, which was enough to quell them. I held enough respect with them that they were like, okay, Maree's away. Let's wait until she gets back, and then we will retable this discussion then. So that brought some breathing space for my team. So we did that. And I arrived back to New Zealand at the end of the month, and to a lot of very long-winded emails from concerned customers. And we thought, right, we need to tackle this. And I had a meeting with the team. And the one thing we did do actually at that time is we consulted a PR person, because it was that at that level that we thought, okay, this is beyond us and we're not seeing the wood for the trees here. Let's get an outside view and see what advice that they have. And the one piece of advice that she gave us, which I hold really valuable, is she said she went and had a look at the communities and the groups that were being particularly nasty, online groups predominantly in Facebook. And she came back to us and she said, you need to actually start quantifying these voices. I've had a little bit of a look, and it doesn't, whilst it appears that there are a lot of voices here, it's not maybe as many voices as you might think. So we started to do that. We actually started to look at individual profiles. We started to look and see who those voices were. We started to actually quantify across multiple platforms where they were. And one of the things that we noticed is that one voice can actually yell very loudly across multiple platforms at multiple times. So whilst it may appear like a load of voices yelling at you, it in reality, in fact, is only one. So once we actually did that and realised that the number of people that were really being particularly vicious was actually a smaller group of people than initially expected, we thought, okay, this isn't actually a representative sample of our community. This is a small faction, a small radical faction of the community, and we need to now be really mindful of our overall community as a whole, because they're staying predominantly silent through this because they are literally shit scared of saying anything in case they get piled on by one of these small voices. So once we actually got that perspective, that was a huge game changer, because that showed us that no, actually, we're not, it's the wider community isn't representative of these SJWs. Yeah. The wider community are those ones that quietly support us at home, and they started quietly sending us messages of support, but they are, just like us, terrified.
Isn't it funny that they like you said, a very small amount or a portion of the community can be so loud across these multiple platforms, and they not only claim to represent the knitting community, which they don't, no one elected them to represent the knitting community, but they also claim to represent entire racial groups and gender and sexualities that they don't represent. It's like they do that in every facet. They try, and because I think it's like it's almost like the ideology itself, the arguments that they make are not strong enough that they have to back it up by saying we speak on behalf of, right?
Yeah.
We speak on behalf of people of color, or we speak on behalf of women, or we speak on behalf of gay people. We speak on behalf of the knitting community. Like, which is how'd you get that position? I don't know. But you're right. I'm glad that I haven't heard of anyone quantifying accounts and trying to match them up. That's a really smart thing to do. Because of course they do. That makes sense. They're on Instagram. They go to Facebook, do the same thing.
Were they actually
Absolutely.
customers too, or were they? Because my suspicion is that a lot of these people weren't ever even customers. They just zoomed in. They swooped in to have an argument and left, and probably never bought anything from you.
Yeah, there were a portion that were customers. Absolutely. There are some even to this day that will, in other groups, very publicly say some quite nasty things and derogatory things about us. But boy, whenever their name pops up in our online store, I'll look at one of my colleagues and go, I so want to screenshot this and post this and say, you've said publicly you're never going to shop from us again, and hello, here you are. No, and as time has gone on, they have said across 2019, we're done with you, we're not going to shop with you, for those that were, and we did see some leave. And you know what? That's fine. This is a free market. Well, I'm hoping it's still a free market post-COVID, but that's another story. It's
sort of. It's not communism yet. Let's just put it that way.
Oh, that is such another conversation. So that was okay. So we sort of got through. It took pretty much most of April to get through it. We started changing our focus from reacting to this group to protecting and making sure we looked after our existing community. So we needed to switch our focus. And it's a really hard thing to do, to switch your focus when you're under attack. And so that piece of advice was worth every penny we paid for it, because it allowed us to actually look into who those voices were, and to actually realise that it's the wider community that we need to be responsible for, not the small faction within it. So we did that, and then things sort of calmed down quite nicely until July, and then Nathan Taylor happened. So Nathan, who's aka Sockmatician, he created a poem. I know that you have discussed him here previously in the past, and his pile-on made the others look tiny. It was just brutally horrific. And we felt that as a business, and me personally, incredibly deeply, because unlike Karen or Kate or Maria, who we didn't know, Nathan is a friend both to our business and a personal friend of mine, because we'd done a yarn project collaboratively with him. I'd brought him to New Zealand on a tour. He'd appeared at my event. We've become very close friends over a number of years. And to know Nathan and to know the purity of this man and what's in his heart and what he represents and who he is, to have him literally within 48 hours be turned into, knitting criminal number one within the eyes of social justice, for me was just so unbelievably wrong.
And for writing a poem about kindness.
Yeah.
That's why they did that. Yeah.
How dare he?
I just throw that in for anyone who doesn't know. Thinking maybe he wrote a poem about kindness and about getting over bullying in the knitting community.
So, but the Nathan thing affected you because you had a previous relationship with Nathan, your friends, and so how did it affect your business?
They just all started again. So we started to get the same email, but it was the same voices, the same emails. What are you going to do about Nathan's problematic behavior? I don't control Nathan.
Right.
And I don't think Nathan's done actually anything wrong. And are you going to come? My favourite is when are you coming out with a statement about the Nathan Taylor situation or the Sockmatician situation? Why do we need to make a statement?
Right.
There is no statement is required. This is it's like creating an issue out of something that we believe that needn't happen. So we've never ever made a statement about where we're at with Nathan. We were like, no, we have a collaboration with our yarn. Personally, he's my friend, and so when it came to the event, they were like, well, what are you going to do about, are you going to make a statement around the event? It's like, no. Are you going to put a diversity statement? There it goes again, that diversity statement. Are you going to put a diversity statement out for your event? And I refused to do that, but I did clarify. What I did do is I put out a code of conduct instead. And I wrote a very clear code of conduct of the level of behaviour that I expected at the event. And I put a lot of the things in there in terms of protecting all of these XYZ purple, yellow, zebraed groups in there. And then I threw a few of my own just for my own personal edification. But I did it primarily actually to protect myself, because as they believed, the social justice elements that attended the event believed that I was doing that to protect those minorities that they believed required their protection, when really all I was doing was putting the code of conduct out to actually, if they'd stepped out of line and were creating issues at the event, because there were a whole bunch of people that felt threatened by them.
Of course.
I then had the ability to say, well, actually, you're in the breach of the code of conduct, so you need to either take a chill pill, step it back, or do that. Now, the one thing I will say with all of this within New Zealand, which is so different to, I think, a lot of the elements that you experience in the US and the UK, is with this whole social justice element here in this country, is we're a nation of 5 million people. The yarn community is an even smaller community than that. So one of the things that was different about our experience, and I know I've spoken to Nathan about this a lot, and for him, what he found most difficult in the UK is when he had those handfuls of people that he actually personally knew. He thought they were good friends, who then publicly would come out and say the most dreadful or dire things about him. Now, in terms of the people that have attacked either Skeinz or attacked me, I know almost every single one of them.
Wow.
And it changes the dynamic
because it's a smaller community. Is that the reason?
It's a smaller community. Yeah. I'm very prominent in the community in the sense that I go to a lot of the events. People know who I am. So I either have a personal relationship with them. I either know these people. Some of them are former friends. They're people that I've come across in my professional day-to-day life in either the event or the yarn store. So there is not any anonymity amongst this group with me. And so that actually had it puts a different perspective on it. So I think in the early stages, they felt that they could talk to me and be very open to me about the ideology and the beliefs because we did actually have a personal relationship. But when they found that I didn't necessarily share that ideology, that's when things started getting a bit crunchy. And I know by the time Nathan had his situation in July, I had the 10-year anniversary of Knit August Nights at the end of August. I mean, that should have been a time of celebration. This was, a huge milestone for any small business or event to actually make it to 10 years, right, and survive that long. Mm-hmm. And here I was going into the event absolutely petrified that one of the people attending the event who I knew had very strong social justice ideologies were going to create issues amongst the wider community that were there. And how do I police that? I had to sit down with my volunteers and sort of say, look, these are some of the issues that we might actually come up with. Are you guys going to feel comfortable about this? What do you feel comfortable doing? What don't you feel comfortable doing? And it was just awful. Like, it was, for me, I was trying to be really positive at the event and try and be happy and open and make sure that everybody who'd paid really good money to be there were having a great time. And the entire time I'm freaking terrified that one of these women was going to do something
because they had caused a scene, right? Yeah. Like at a previous with Sockmetition, that one of them had confronted him angrily, causing a scene, showing that they're perfectly willing to in public, some of them, to threaten you, to get in your face, to make a big disturbance. Yeah. I can't imagine what that feels like.
The only thing in my favour that I felt that I had was that one of the things I'd learned over the years is that it's very, very easy to be brave behind a keyboard, but it's quite a different story when you're actually face to face with somebody. And I'm nearly 5'11" and 120 kilos, so I'm not exactly a shrinking violet. And fortunately, everybody played, there were no incidences, and I worked really hard to make sure that there weren't. And it was great. The event went off without a hitch in that respect, and it was good. And it was a huge relief for me. But what I was definitely noticing is, because I didn't come out against Nathan, and there were a number of so many people there that were supportive of Nathan, and they showed that they came and voiced that support to me, which was wonderful. That the social justice element that were attending the event, I could see that they were really quite uncomfortable, that they realised that they were in the minority at the event, not the majority. And once the event actually ceased last year, what I've had since then is a number of them contact me, particularly through the end of this year and the end of last year and the beginning of this year, to say, unless you change your position on Nathan, we will be forced to withdraw from the event.
Good riddance.
Well,
I mean, that's
the thing that made me laugh is you thought I was going to invite you back after your behaviour last year. But okay, delusion is free. And it's been really intriguing. So for me now, that was 2019. 2020, coming into 2020, I sat down with the team and my husband, and I looked at the year. We spend a lot of time reflecting. So for us, just for people that don't know, I'm in New Zealand, and in New Zealand, December, January, February are our summer holidays. So for us, Christmas holidays are summer holidays. So we took some time off in January, and often that is the time usually that as a family we travel, because that's when I can take, it's a quiet time in my businesses. It's also a quiet time in my husband's business. So that's when we travel. And we took some time in January to travel with the family. And I said to my husband at that time, I think when I get back to work, I've got a new mantra for this year, and it's not to make decisions based out of fear.
Good for you.
Because so many of my decisions last year and our team, with the team and also ourselves, and in his business and mine, they were made out of fear. They were made out of fear of retaliation. They were made out of fear of negative publicity. They were made out of fear of what these people might think. And that doesn't lead to positive decision making. Yeah. It doesn't lead to never ever. So that was one of the decisions that I made. And
the other thing really quickly is that I just want to interject there is when a lot of times, especially small business owners don't think like this, because it's a struggle to be a business owner, and you get to 10 years and it's a big deal and you've got a lot going on. Sometimes you forget that, you may be under attack, but a lot of your community, they are looking to your leadership to help shelter them from attack, because they're afraid to say anything and they feel a lot more powerless than you do. And sometimes they're just looking to you to step up and say, hey, community, it's okay. It's these social justice crazies that are wrong. They're the bullies. You're welcome here. And we don't buy into that crap. And, this is a community that's not going to allow bullying. So, but I think a lot of business owners forget they have that power.
Yeah, because you are a leader. What they were saying about you being a leader was true. It's just that what they wanted you to lead people towards was a flawed belief system. But you are a leader in being, a business owner and having a profile on social media. And I think Carter's right. When you show a community that you're going to operate without fear, like you help those people who are so afraid to see you offer an example of what one can behave like, in the face of that kind of
and they're going after you precisely because they know you have sway, right? They would go after you a little bit and then ignore you if you were just someone who couldn't stand up to them. But they're going after you pretty vociferously because they know that you have influence. I just wanted to make that point. That's all.
And this is where the whole COVID situation came in. So, every small business is different. There are small businesses are the backbone of pretty much any civilization, whether it be a small sole trader through to a family business or to, in our case, a small to medium business enterprise. So the Skeinz and the Design Spun business is around 30 people. So I'm one of the shareholders of that business, and I take my responsibility not only to the colleagues that I care about very much, quite deeply, but actually as the responsibility to ensure that that business is solvent and healthy and able to actually continue operating, because there are 30 families that rely on my contribution contribution to that business to ensure their livelihood. So that is something that I think if you're an employee and never been a business owner, particularly if you have employees, is always on your mind, because it's not only yourself that you're looking after, you're actually looking after those people as well. And it's something that I've always considered, and my husband with the business and the people that we employ in that business as well. So it is a risk and a constant steering point that we always have, is that it's much bigger than you. It's always a much bigger thing. So when this COVID lockdown has happened here in New Zealand, there has been lots of 6 weeks later, what is essential, what is non-essential. What we had was a situation that after the first few days of lockdown, it was incredibly rushed. We literally went from being relatively free, life as normal, to within 2 days being completely locked down.
And when you say completely, just for any people watching from the States, you mean, and you were the first person to tell me this, I think, New Zealand went a step further. They didn't just deem arbitrarily some businesses as non-essential and say you can't open your brick and mortar shops. They also said you cannot sell online.
Yeah, no. So every single retail store closed. So it's actually easier for me to tell you what it was allowed to open. Supermarkets were allowed to open, but small food providers were not. So
big
chains are fine.
Big chains were fine. Small operators were not. Gas stations. They did actually then concede and allow convenience stores to open, because they realised that there were a lot of areas that didn't have large chain supermarkets. New Zealand is a mixture. We do have a lot of small provincial areas, so they did have to concede with that. And pharmacies and obviously GP surgeries were allowed to remain open for their patients. And that was it. Everything else shut down. Not even online shopping. So no online shopping, no food deliveries, nothing. So you had the supermarket, you had the pharmacy, you had the gas station, you had a convenience store. And then in the early stages, if we have a lot of food delivery businesses here, so you buy like a food kit that comes with all your, like a meal kit for a week, that's quite popular in this part of the world. Those businesses were allowed to remain open delivering those meal kits. Ironically, well, I can understand why they've done it. Wineries were allowed to remain open. And when I say remain open, they were allowed to continue, because it's right in harvest time here. Literally the middle of vintage is when the lockdown started. So they said to wineries, okay, you need to maintain and continue vintage. We understand that. So vintage was allowed to continue. And then any businesses supplying those. So if you were we live in, so where I am here, we are horticulture and viticulture is our main primary industries here. So we also have a number of large food processing plants. They were allowed to continue, because obviously they're producing food to go back into the supermarket. So that was it. I mean, everything else got locked down. One of the other elements within that, and all the criteria that they had in terms of what was an essential business was very broad. It was basically food, essential servicing to food, health, and I can't remember what the other one was. It was really broad.
Can I guess that government was considered essential?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. Can't not have the government.
Yeah. Let's put it this way. There were a lot of bus drivers that had a lot of alone time in the early part of lockdown for public transport.
Right.
Because no one was allowed to move around except for workers. But most of those essential workers, don't get me started, Carter. So
how did they shut down? Hold on. How did they shut down internet shopping? Because to me, did they go after domain name servers and shut you down? How do they shut down internet sales? Can you just describe that? Because that's pretty scary to me.
Yeah, so how they did it is they operated, in using their terminology, a high trust model. So what they did is they couldn't physically shut us down. They expected us to either, if we were taking orders, saying that we wouldn't distribute them until we were allowed to do so, or in our particular case, for the first 4 days, we were able to turn off the purchasing ability on our website. So we just did that. We just turned it off, so people couldn't purchase anything. And the other thing they did is they created a phone line. So then the policing was done by the community. So
the Karen, the Stasi came out.
Yeah. So that's how they did it. And we then went back across the first weekend of lockdown. We have a business mentor who is someone within industry, very well known, actually in the tech industry internationally, and who happens to be a New Zealander who has one of his homes literally right across the road from us here. And I was out walking my dog and he popped his head up. I didn't realise he was quarantining there. And we were allowed to leave the house, by the way, for small amounts of exercise, but only walking or cycling for a short distance for a short time from your home. So in our case, we leave, we go take the dogs a loop around the block and back. And if you're seen walking anywhere, the police will come up to you and say, well, what are you doing? Anyway. And he suggested, have we looked at our contacting the Ministry of Business, Enterprise and Employment, which were controlling what businesses were essential and what weren't, to see whether or not we had a case on the basis of mental health, because knitting and craft has been proven to be a treatment for those conditions, to relieve anxiety. We supply prisons, we supply hospitals, we supply neonatal groups, we supply people that work with mental health in the community, all using knitting as a therapy. We knew that particularly in the aged care sector, that there were a lot of people, particularly in aged care, who were utterly terrified that they knew that they were the most at-risk group and that they were looking for things. I mean, we had the sector saying, look, are you able to supply us so they can have something to do with their hands to take their mind off COVID. And you can see by the mortality numbers that when it gets into an aged care facility, it has a devastating effect. So that fear is perfectly real and justified. So I rang the ministry on that first Monday, and I rang thinking, I'll ask them, they'll either say yes or no, that we have a case or not. And I was going to ask them, how do I apply to become an essential business? That was my question. And I got through to somebody and I spoke to this chap, and he asked about what our business was, what we did, who we supplied. I said to him, we look after people in terms of mental health. Under health and essential, does that fall into the criteria? And he said, I just want to get some more information. Half an hour later, he had covered off all the different aspects of the business that we have, who we supply, why we supply them, how we go about supplying them, are we able to supply them in a safe fashion, contactless and all the rest of it. And after about a 35 minute conversation, he says to me, no, you fall into the criteria as an essential business. And I said, so this means that I can reopen my online store and start selling online? Yes. How do I then, is there a certificate or anything? Yeah, yes. And he said, no, we haven't got that yet. We haven't set up an online registration. All you need to do, this is my name, this is the time that I'd contacted, and if anybody contacts you, they can verify through this conversation. And I said, okay, that's great. So we reopened our store.
Nice. I'm sure that went over well with your fans.
Oh, yeah. It was funny because I rang my general manager, I rang him and I said to him, it's happened, this is what they've said, this is the conversation. I logged with him, who I spoke to, and I said to him, right, well, I'm going to send out a newsletter and let people know. And I said to him too, I said, well, hold on, let me also check with our warehouse chap to make sure he's happy to go back to work. I mean, he may not want to. So I spoke to all our key people in the business. I also contacted our courier company and I said to them, look, are you happy to come and pick up, this is the procedure we have for contactless deliveries. Are you happy to do that? We're not going to, because the belief that the government had you believe at that time is the reason they closed down online businesses is that they needed to leave distribution channels clear for emergency things like medicines and the like to get through to hospitals and such.
By the way, that's such a stupid government idea, because if anyone who's run a business knows, like, if I'm a distribution company, I want to remain at capacity all the time. It's inefficient for me to like suddenly have fits and starts and like this stuff isn't going anymore, and like it's a dumb idea to start with. But it's a separate.
So it's like here in the States with the hospitals, because they've banned all supposed non-essential surgeries, or they've postponed them. They're laying off hospital workers now. Now they have hospitals that are empty. They're even laying off respiratory technicians, which you would think you would want to keep on staff. But because they've said no, only the quote unquote essential, then the businesses themselves, the supply chain, if you will, is suffering. It's ridiculous.
It's crazy. And when I spoke to them, they were running at less than 30% capacity. They were desperate for our business because, as she said, we're running empty trucks around the country. I mean, how much do you think you'll be doing? And I said, well, I gave her an estimate. She said, absolutely. She said, if you've got permission, we will pick up and collect and deliver from you. And I said, okay, great. So we put out a newsletter, and I braced myself for the onslaught. And, they don't disappoint. They really don't disappoint. And
how dare you want to supply nursing homes with something to do? I can just imagine. But
interestingly enough, with social justice ideology, one of the things that I've noticed with social justice ideology is that they keep co-opting groups in, right, that they need to protect. So I think one of the latest groups within knitting lately has been in terms of people being fattest. They'll actually have a crack at different designers because their patterns don't go up to a certain size, and it doesn't cover people of a certain size, right? So they're now having a crack. They're now the protector of fat people. I'm a fat person. I don't need their freaking protection. I can look after myself. Thank you very much. But that's the latest group. But the one big group that they always seem to forget is the age group, the senior citizen group. Don't old people matter anymore? Oh, actually, no, they don't want to protect old people, because old people, when they actually realise what they're about, would turn around and look at them and go, oh, for goodness sake, go and get a life.
Most old people are not that sympathetic to the whiny social justice stuff. They're like, I lived through the Depression. What are you? Yeah,
exactly. They've lived in the real world. What have you done? And so for that group there especially, they're just not tolerant at all. So they had a good old crack at me. And so you have your SJW bingo, I think, with certain words and phrases. Yeah. We have our SJW list, and it's kind of like, oh, ding, ding, yes, they've commented. Oh, ding, ding, got an email from them. Oh, ding, ding, got an email. And then it'd be like, oh, hold on, such and such hasn't seen. Oh, there she goes. She's right. Good to hear off.
You could play a game, just waiting for each of your repeat offenders to check in.
Yeah, and it was. And every now and then when we got a new voice, it was like, oh, newbie. Oh, no, I've not struck them before. Okay, let's add them to the list. All right.
So they're pissed at you because you opened during the crisis. Let's just be clear. They're angry that you're open.
And it was, so the terms that was used were allegedly got permission to open, and that upset me greatly because you're calling my integrity into question. There was no allegedly about it.
Well,
allegedly,
of course they would say that. Yeah.
The other one was, they found a loophole.
I saw that. They accused you of, quote, finding a loophole.
I don't think any of them understand what a loophole means, but that's a separate issue.
Yeah.
Which, funny enough, for knitters. Knitting joke.
Is a loophole a knitting thing?
Is it? I don't know. I just assume. Maybe that's crochet. Don't you make a little loop?
Crochet, like loops. Yep, definitely.
Yeah, you make loops.
They had so they found a loophole. What else did I get? It was, if you're going to start selling hand knitting yarn, you'll be wanting to go to the garden centre or buy jigsaw puzzles next.
So I guess my question now is, what did they do specifically other than send you nasty letters and emails, which is par for the course with them? Did they do anything in particular to try and hurt your business?
Yeah, there was well, we've narrowed it down to a few. They went straight back to the Ministry of Business, Employment and Innovation and Employment, and they complained about us. So they dobbed us in, saying we are trading and we shouldn't be trading. We're not an essential business. Why are you letting them trade? And then the ministry contacted us and sent the most incredible email. It was one of those. It felt like a Ronan Keating song. You know, you say something when you say nothing at all. It was one of those sort of emails that there was nothing. Email. Yeah, there was nothing definitive in the email whatsoever. And the only thing in the email they asked us to stop doing was we had on our website that we have been granted permission by IMBI, which is the acronym IMBI, to continue to trade. And they said we needed to take all reference to IMBI off our website. Okay, we can take it off and just say we have permission to trade. So I did that immediately. That's the only thing they asked me to do in the email.
You know why? Because what they really care about is what they want to say to you is, please make these people stop bothering us. That's what they want. And the email was just full of would, could, should, maybe. And by the time we received the email from them, which was a good week or so later, it was they'd actually had to relax the criteria. So we're in the middle of late autumn here now. So we're heading into the winter months. So they expanded the essential goods criteria to then also include warmth and products that provided warmth. And the exact examples that they had on their website was i.e. blankets and or heaters. We sell blankets at our store. One of our shareholders is actually a blanket weaver, so we have a range of blankets. And, of course, with hand knitting yarn, you buy the components to make blankets. In fact, that's one of the most popular things that people knit with our yarns. And also, too, you're buying the components to knit warm clothing. Predominantly, most people knit for babies. Babies are the number one trigger for people to start knitting. So we looked at this and thought, oh, well, we've even got a stronger case now as an essential business, because not only are we helping with mental health, but we're also providing services to help keep people warm. So we were quite comfortable in the fact that our case to be an essential business was really strong. And so we got this email from them, and I replied outlining all of those aspects, breaking it all down, letting them know where we sat, where we believed and how we sat within that essential criteria, and fired that back to them. And that's when the volleys of emails started. And obviously the person sending the emails had either knew one of these people directly, bearing in mind this is New Zealand, okay? So, everybody knows somebody here. And it was quite clear that there was either a political agenda not to have businesses like ours open, or a personal agenda. Either way, neither of them, you either set out a criteria and you stick to it. You don't want politics or personalities to get involved. So it's at that point that I kicked all this up to my managing director and colleague and said, fill your boots, Tiger. I'm just going to keep the website going. And until we get the definitive, you need to turn everything off, I'm just going to keep going. Because up until this point, they hadn't actually asked us to stop trading. It was lots of word salad going backwards and forwards. And then late on Thursday before the Easter break, they came out on their website and clearly defined products that weren't essential. And hand knitting yarn was one of those products defined.
Wow.
Wait, that are not essential?
That are non-essential. They then also came back and also defined products, like they reiterated a lot of those small businesses, like selling like bespoke butcheries and like people supplying farmers markets and vegetable suppliers, nutritional supplements.
Wait, vegetable suppliers are non-essential?
Yes, because unless you supply a supermarket, you're not allowed. You theoretically weren't allowed.
Where do they think food comes from? I don't understand.
It's the small farmers and the small businesses.
I see.
Yeah,
you're not essential unless you have a good lobbyist.
Yeah,
yeah. Unless you're a huge company.
And that was exactly it, because at the time, literally the night that they defined that hand knitting yarn wasn't an essential item, turf maintenance was the other thing that was on there. Turf maintenance. Right at the 11th hour, they withdrew turf maintenance because obviously the people that play golf hold quite a strong lobby, and they wanted to make sure that their golf courses were maintained.
Wait, tooth maintenance.
So turf maintenance is actually
essential. Oh, turf. Yeah. I thought you meant toothbrushes and toothpaste.
Oh. No, I thought maybe Keri thought you meant...
Funnily enough, dentists, I mean, we've got friends who are dentists. Dentists still aren't allowed to do anything.
Dentists are not essential.
No, dentists are not essential.
But grass for golfing is essential.
Yes.
Yeah, and well, that's I guess that's what you would get from. So, we talk about convergence. Like the SJWs also do infiltrate government too. I mean, it's not just businesses, and so you probably do have some allies. They probably do have some allies in your local government that are gunning for you, I would imagine.
Yeah, look, in this country, we have a quite leftward-leaning government in this country, so. The SJW faction certainly do have a very sympathetic voice here in New Zealand, for sure, in the government.
Yeah.
That's without a doubt.
When did they send, and maybe you're building up to this, when did they send a police officer to your warehouse?
Oh, yeah. So I couldn't believe that. So when we did the announcement on the Monday that we were allowed to sell, so what really fired them up is I sent out a newsletter, but also one of the we essentially only have two main media companies in New Zealand, and one of those print media companies. One of those media companies contacted me wanting to do a story because they saw this as a good news story. They thought it was a great idea, and they really wanted to do something on it. So they came, they did an interview, and the following day that was published in a national newspaper, which of course really set them off, because how dare she contact the media and promote this? I didn't do that, but anyway. So that really...
How dare you run a business?
How dare I run a business? Yeah, that certainly got their pecker up, and one of them rang and dobbed us in on the 105 dob line, dobbed us in for opening our business illegally, and got a police officer sent round. So my poor chap who works in the warehouse got the fright of his life. He's working away, and next thing you know, there's a rap on the corrugated iron sort of door, and he's opening it, and he's saying, and there's a policeman standing there saying, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Well, I'm working." And I spoke to the policeman. He contacted me. He had a nice chat to him. Then he rang me, and I explained to him our permission and where we're at and what we're doing. And he said, "That's fine." He said, "Look, we just had a complaint come in." And I said, "Did the complaint come in locally by any chance?" And he said, "Oh, no, it came in from elsewhere."
Yeah.
So it wasn't anyone locally in our region that complained. It was elsewhere. So they complained to them. So he was fine, and he was wonderful, actually, the local policeman. And I said to him, "Look, I'm quite concerned about my staff member. He's working in this warehouse by himself because the permission meant that he needed to be there by himself. He couldn't have anyone to help him. I'm actually worried about his security." And he said, "No, so am I. No problem whatsoever. I will add him to my rounds, and I will call in and check on him and make sure he's okay and he's safe." And I said, "Look, I appreciate that."
Nice.
So, that's the positive side of it. But it's one of the things that I think for me, one of the comments that really sat with me and really annoyed me was I had someone that came back and said, this may be legal, but is it ethical? Is it moral? Who gets to decide that?
Right.
So where we're at now is we are now back trading again. We started trading again on Tuesday. So our Tuesday this week. And the country now is in level 3. So there is online businesses now, for the most part, have now reopened. So that has been a huge step forward from our point of view. And we are just really now madly trying to make sure that the focus from a COVID perspective in New Zealand, COVID is essentially eliminated. How do we then move forward and actually regrow our business and make sure that the people, that the community that do really need us, are able to get the products that we have and are able to actually get the service that they require, and the social justice group, I mean, just really leave us alone. Now, mind you, now that I've done this will flea them up again for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to leave you alone, but that's wishful thinking.
We like, you could send them our way. We're used to it.
Yeah.
Actually, how long? You made my day once, Keri. I saw on Instagram you had a crack at one of my top tenors.
Oh, I did? Which one?
Yeah, you did. It was wonderful. It was, yeah. I was like, woohoo!
Tiger have a crack at her too. Because sometimes my dog gets in the fray. Carter doesn't know this, but Tiger's one of the most banned, blocked doggies probably on Instagram.
I've heard the rumors. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I just want to say, it is lovely to talk to you in person finally, and I've just been enchanted by your accent, as Americans often are, New Zealand accents, and I'm loving all these new phrases you're teaching me, like have a crack at, which you never.
Actually, my favorite thing is I like that you say we're trading again, because people don't say that, but it's a people in the U.S. don't say that, but it's an accurate description of what a business does. I like the terminology. How long were things shut down in New Zealand? Like, you guys were shut less time than other people, but how long were, like a typical small business, how long were they just without any revenue?
So as an online business, 5 weeks.
Wow, 5 weeks.
As a retail business, they're still closed.
Oh, how many weeks has it been?
We're now coming to the end of week 6.
Wow, okay. So I imagine this is going to be devastating, right? I mean,
yeah. So the big focus now is regrowing the economy. I mean, I'm someone I've been self-employed for a really long time, and I think it's one of the things when you are self-employed that you have a tendency to look at governance and freedoms and planning and decision making a little bit more differently than if you work in the public sector or if you work solely as an employee, because it all comes down to that level of responsibility. And so I'm someone that has always been like, the most important thing, the only thing that you can control, and this is what I've had to console myself with during this lockdown, is the only thing that I can control is my own actions. I can't control anything else. So I can't get upset, try and not get too upset about the things that are outside of my control.
You know what, Maree? This is why the SJW ideology didn't win you over. Because if you're a person who believes in personal responsibility and that you can only control and fix yourself, then it's not as easy for them to pull you into a belief system that's all about changing everyone else except for yourself. So I think when people try to ask, like, what's the difference between a personality type who knows who they are and stands up for themselves and doesn't bow and kiss the ring like you, and a personality type that gives into the mob pressure and makes the demanded apology and then is controlled by them forever, I think that's a big difference in personality, is just deep down knowing what I can control is this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, and you know, it is really important. And I've looked at this, and we've so for us now that we've got some more freedoms, it's about, okay, now we have more control. So my focus very much in this last week is about regrowing our business, making sure that our business has longevity, that it survives, that those 30 families that we look after, and the yarn business as well looked after. The other business that my husband and I have is actually in the health sector, and you know, you touched on it before. I mean, the health sector has been devastated by this. I mean, we have been completely closed down. You know, we employ 3 full-time staff plus up to 18 casual staff that come and go on any given sort of basis. None of them have been working across this crisis. So, you know, so now fortunately they actually got permission yesterday that so from next week that business is going to slowly start opening. And so for me, it's now the focus on the recovery. So how do we recover? How do we recover within the constraints that we have? How do we move forward and go, okay, I can't change the way that the government has set things out, but the positives with this is that New Zealand hopefully is going to come out, brand New Zealand is hopefully internationally going to come out with some pretty positive kudos. But we need to make sure that we get the local economy up and running as well. Interestingly enough, I mean, the social justice element here in New Zealand have been really, really hard on not only the knitting community, but they've been very vocal, particularly from the environmental standpoint, with farmers, horticulture, agriculture, and all of those sectors. I tell you what, you haven't heard an absolute peep out of them in the last 6 weeks, because there is the reality now that as a primary industry nation, that these people are required more than ever before. And so hopefully, they are now finally going to start getting the recognition that they deserve. And it's made me laugh. They've had one of the things they've had is say lots of thank you to our essential workers. And they talk, they're saying about the nurses or the doctors that are working at the coalfront with COVID. Well, actually, for me, those essential workers are those farmers who are out there, because for them, it's same shit, different day. I mean, COVID hasn't changed anything for them. They're still out there trying to make sure they're getting their crops in. They're still out there trying to make sure that the sheep are there being shorn, or there's meat, or there's wool, or there's all of those aspects. Nothing has changed for them. They're still working just as hard as they've always worked. Yep. And from our perspective, leading an economy, I mean, tourism has been the number one industry in this country. That is now gone.
Yeah. One thing the left seems to really, a lot of people on the left seem to just have no clue what entire sections of the economy do. They just dismiss things as if they just spring into existence magically, and like, oh, our food will just be here magically, and these things will just happen, and they dismiss the investment community necessary to help build businesses. They dismiss the transportation industry. They dismiss the fossil fuel industry that gets the transportation there. They dismiss the agriculture, the heavy industry that is necessary to build the combines. Like, they dismiss just literally everything, and they think that they can, they can hang out and sip their Starbucks and play on their iPhone without any modern society. They feel like they can just, delete some section of society because they don't like those people, because they don't understand them, and everything will function normally. And the truth is, in a modern society, everything is connected. I think everything is essential. I mean, for that farmer to do his job, he relies on modern tools nowadays. He's not, he's not using a hoe that he carved out of wood, right? He's using modern tools, and those modern tools all use plastics and metals, and they require mining, and they require transportation, and they require investment capital to build the machinery, to make the tools. Everything's connected to everything. It's just the idea that we're not interconnected and we can just turn parts of the economy on and off and it won't have a massive effect is just ludicrous to me. But sorry for the rant.
One of the driving forces that I've sort of observed around social justice ideology is one of the things that it actually predisposes itself on, which I find personally quite ironic, is that it's an ideology driven out of privilege, because you're dealing with people that are actually in privileged situations where they've never actually had to insert themselves into the lives of those that they're supposedly championing, and they just... And I just find that incredibly ironic, because, as you said, they are really privileged. They a lot of them work in the public sector. That's one of the things I've noticed here. They either work in the public sector or have very strong ties to the public sector or non-profit type organisations. They have a tendency never to have spent time holding that responsibility that you hold as a business owner.
Right. And it's hard to hold that and still be social justice-y. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, they've never had to hold those responsibilities. They've never had to hold those responsibilities of employing people, of paying taxes. Not only paying taxes in terms of their PAYE, which is just your everyday income tax, but the taxes that we actually have to pay as a business, or we have to pay on property, or all of those sorts of things that we do. And I mean, we live in a very highly taxed. Our tax rates here in New Zealand are much higher than they are in the US. And we have a really interesting governance in the sense that our social, at the moment, we do actually have what I would call a mid to far left government. We have a government that is made up of three parties. It's a unholy alliance of a coalition. But what we do have is an incredibly gifted, charismatic leader. She's genuinely quite a gifted politician in the sense that she's empathetic, she's an incredible leader. So the one thing that she's done, and boy, has she had a baptism by fire since she has been elected Prime Minister. I mean, the Christchurch shooting, the Whakaari White Island eruption, now we've got the COVID situation. And her superpower is the fact that she's an effective leader of people. But is she an effective leader of government? And it's what, so for me, that's the dichotomy that I struggle with her, because I actually believe she is incredibly gifted as an individual. But governance is more than just an individual. Governance is actually having a collective team of people that are working together in order to run a country. And unfortunately, that collection could be better. And I'm looking forward now at a recovery. And again, I have to keep telling myself I can only control the actions that I do, because that's when the frustrations come in. And I think that's where we're at now. There is starting to be some frustrations within New Zealand. We've been actually, I think, as a nation, incredibly compliant about the very stringent form of lockdown that we have had. Very, very compliant.
Do you think compliant in a bad way? Like, are you disappointed in the population for being compliant, or do you think it was good?
It depends on what day. If you asked me yesterday, I was having a particularly bad day yesterday. I mean, yesterday I think I said to my husband after a couple of glasses of wine, I was feeling particularly ranty. I think I said to him, I feel like I've gone to bed in a democracy, woken up in a dictatorship. So I was a bit crabby. But then today,
you're not alone. It's okay.
Then today I feel a little bit more zen about it, and because I'm seeing a light at the end of the tunnel and the numbers are becoming less, and I see the logic behind why she made the decisions that she's made. And I've also got to remember, when you're actually making decisions, whether it's in your own business or it's in governance, hindsight's always 20/20. So you can't be too critical about decisions that she's made at the time, because she's made those decisions based on the information she's had to hand. So
there definitely has been a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking, as we would call it in the US, going on.
Yeah, so it's, for me now, it's about making sure in a recovery is that you need to actually, regardless of partisan politics, you've got to make sure that you get the right people together to start a dialogue of ideas to ensure that everybody gets heard and not dismissed because of ideologies. And you actually take those ideas, and from then you formulate a plan for a nation to actually move forward and recover. And I'm quietly hopeful that we will manage to do that. I mean, the partisan politics here is nothing like the partisan politics you have across there. I personally, interpersonally, I'm not overly fond of Donald Trump, but, like a broken clock, it's right at least twice a day. And it worries me that there are some really good ideas that may have been dismissed purely because they've come from him. And, I've said to friends here who just will dismiss anything that he says, and it's like, well, actually, if that idea had come from the mouth of Barack Obama, would you then take that idea seriously? Just because it's become from the mouth of Donald Trump, you automatically dismiss it because it's Donald Trump. An idea actually doesn't have a race, a religion, or a person. An idea is an idea. It should be pure in its form. So we need to sort of cut away all of those preconceived ideas or notions around people and actually start looking at those ideas and start pulling those together and realise that the world is never going to be the same again, regardless of whether you're in New Zealand or the US or Africa or Europe. I mean, it is completely changed. So how do we rebuild ourselves? We've had the ultimate hard reset. How do we reboot and repopulate and put new ideas forward to be able to rebuild?
Yeah. But I think on both sides of the aisle, and at least in the U.S., it's really hard for people to separate Donald Trump from what the ideas are. Like if you're a Trump fan, no matter what he says is the best thing ever, and you can dismiss any gaffe that he makes as some brilliant 4D chess thing that he's doing intentionally. And if you're not a Donald Trump fan, or if you have what we refer to as Trump derangement syndrome, then he could literally say 2 + 2 is 4 and the sky is blue, and people would say Nazi. I can't believe you said that. And so it's a horrible idea that 2 + 2.
You know who else believes the sky is blue? Nazis.
Right? Yeah, Hitler thought the sky was blue. He used math. Yeah,
that's what they would say.
It's exactly what they would say. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for giving us your time today, Maree. I'm happy we finally got to do this. And before we go, I wanted to just plug your website again. Now that you're up and running, and you ship internationally, right?
We do ship internationally. We use DHL. So ironically, I can get things shipped to California faster than I can get them shipped to the bottom of New Zealand. So so we do ship. So it's Skeinz, SKEINZ.com, or Z as you call it over there, SKEINZ.com. We're also on Facebook as well. I do during lockdown. I've been doing a thing called the Quarantine Diaries on our Skeinz Facebook page every single day. I totally understand why you guys stopped doing daily broadcasts. It's hard. Every single day is really hard. But yeah,
we're trying to go for quality over quantity. That was our plan.
I committed to do it daily through level 3 and level 4. So we've through level 4. We now hopefully only just got a little bit over a week to run on level 3, and then I'll probably go back to twice a week after that, which will be more manageable. And but if you literally just put in Skeinz, SKEINZ, you will find us. And then Knit August Nights will be back in 2021. So if anyone feels like a knitting holiday in New Zealand, Napier is beautiful. We're right by the ocean. We have the
May I say that I'm going to set that as a personal goal for myself, because I've always wanted to visit New Zealand, and in fact, getting the chance to go there would feel like winning a trip to Mars. So
racist.
That's on my calendar.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me as well. It's it's quite nice to get things off your chest.
Yes.
Well, thank you for joining. Yes. We really appreciate it, and good luck to you and to New Zealand.
Good luck.
I think. We're a nation of doers. I'm pretty confident that we will be okay.
Nice.
Well, you are lovely. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.